see. Welcome to the July 22nd to 2021 electronic meeting of the Environmental Commission. This meeting is in accordance with executive orders from the governor to effect social distancing and mitigate the spread of the COVID-19 virus. We intend to conduct this meeting similarly to an in-person meeting. However, please be patient if there are technical issues. Public comment will be via telephone only. To speak during any of the public comment opportunities, there will be two, one at the beginning of the meeting and one at the end. Please call 1-888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 or 213-338-8477 or 206-337-9723 and enter meeting ID number 978-7334-3910. This information is also available on the published agenda, in the public notices section of the city website, and on the broadcast of this meeting on CTN Channel 16, AT&T Channel 99, and online at www.a2gov.org/watchctn. So, call this meeting to order at 7:06. Galen, would you read the land heritage statement? Galen?
All right. Land use statement. I acknowledge that the land the city of Ann Arbor occupies is the ancestral, traditional, and contemporary lands of the Anishinaabe, including Odiwa, Ojibwe, Bodewodmi, and Wyandot peoples. I further acknowledge that our city stands, like almost all property in the United States, on lands obtained generally in unconscionable ways from indigenous people. The taking of this land was formalized by the Treaty of Detroit in 1807. Knowing where we work, where we live, work, study, and recreate does not change the past, but a thorough understanding of the ongoing consequences of this past can empower us in our work to create a future that supports human flourishing and justice for all individuals. And that's the land use statement.
Well, thank you, Galen. Could you initiate the roll call?
I sure will. All right, Commissioner Graham.
I'm here.
Commissioner Needham. Commissioner Needham. Councilmember Dish.
Present from Ann Arbor.
Right. Commissioner Gibb Randall. Commissioner Gibb Randall. Councilmember Griswold.
Here from Ann Arbor.
All right. Commissioner Collywart.
Here.
President or Chairperson Stephen Brown.
Present for here in Ann Arbor.
All right. Commissioner Mursky. Commissioner Mursky. Vice Chairperson Mitchell.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Commissioner Vandenbroek.
Here.
Commissioner Oriole.
Here from Ann Arbor.
Right. Commissioner Zing.
Here from Ann Arbor.
All right, we have a quorum.
All right, thank you, Galen. The next item on the agenda is approval of this agenda. Does anybody wish to propose any changes to the agenda for this meeting?
So moved.
I see Kathy Griswold's hand up.
I would like to add a new business item. I could report it out with council, communications, but I think it's significant enough to have its own agenda item. And that is the A20 plan was revised after a council vote on Monday night.
Okay.
And Councilmember Dish was a co-sponsor of that resolution.
Okay. So shall we append it to the end or at the beginning, or put it at the beginning of the presentation?
Either one.
Okay. Well, let's put it near the end. And let's try to, let's try to be timely with the other items on the agenda. Are there any other suggestions to amend the agenda? Okay, do I have a motion to, I guess Kathy did the first motion. Are there a second to add this item to the agenda? Do I say second? I don't
Mitchell
hear.
seconds. I hit second.
Okay, Rita seconds. All who vote aye, raise your hand or say aye.
Aye.
All who vote no, please raise your hand or say no. Are there any abstentions? Okay, the agenda is modified unanimously. We will add an agenda item at the end of new business for A20 revisions. Kathy and Lisa will lead that discussion. So the next item on the agenda is public commentary. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 1-888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 978-7334-3911. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. And be patient, there can be a delay of up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. Do we have anybody on the line as yet, Galen? Okay.
There are no callers.
Okay, well, we'll wait another 30 seconds. Okay, is there anybody on the line as yet?
There's no one on the line.
Okay, well, this ends the first public commentary period. You'll have a second opportunity to speak at the end of the meeting. So the next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. Let's go for the May minutes first and do these separately. Are there any suggested amendments to the minutes as written? I don't hear or see any comments, so I do have one, and that is on page 5, under the section reports from committees, etc. Under the council report, it just states Judge Cannon ordered Gelman 2, and then there's nothing. So it's kind of open-ended. So I don't have anything in my notes that really specifies what that was, because as I remember, there was discussion afterwards about about some other items with the Gelman settlement.
I drafted those, so if you don't mind, I'll just check and see if I can find that.
I don't have them in front of me right this minute, but Judge Connors ordered Gelman to implement the 4th CJ with that.
I think that was it, but I'm not entirely certain.
And what was the date of that, Rita?
May 24th, I believe.
No, May 27th.
Okay, sorry.
That's the date of our last, our May.
You know, I remember reading that, Steve, with that incomplete sentence, and I thought that I had gone back to my notes and I thought I had fixed it. Shoot.
Per my notes, it says the 4th CJ as amended and restated.
That's what my notes state as well. So if there are no other objections to that, I think, why don't we, is there a motion to add that to the minutes? Kathy, is there a second? Anybody second?
All right. I'll second.
Chris, all who would like to finalize these minutes with the addition of, with the completion of the sentence, Judge Connor ordered Gelman to implement the 4th consent judgment. Are there all who approve, say aye or raise your hands. All who disapprove or say no, raise your hands or say no. Are there any abstentions? Hearing none, the minutes are passed unanimously as amended. Okay, let's move on to the June minutes. Are there any suggested amendments or discussion? Hearing or seeing none, do I have a motion for accepting the minutes as drafted? I see no hands or hear anything. Is anybody going? Hello?
I propose yes.
Okay, Rita, okay, we have one motion.
I move yes.
Second, John.
John Callowart, Commissioner Callowart seconded it. All who approve of the minutes as drafted, say aye or raise your hands. All who opposed, raise your hands or say no. Any abstentions? Okay, hearing none, the June minutes pass unanimously as drafted. Okay, let's move on to the next item on the agenda, special presentations. First one is unfinished business. The first item under unfinished business is a discussion of the work group of Chapter 40.
Yes. So I would like to just open that for that discussion, if I may. And I want to thank Chris Graham for providing some comments on Chapter 40 for redrafting it. But I would appreciate very much arranging for a small work group, which could be me and Chris, possibly Shannon Gabrandel, possibly Councilmember Griswold. I think Chris Vandenbroek may be interested as well, to look at Chapter 40 and just to be able to ask some questions about the changes that you had suggested, so that we feel confident that I feel confident anyway that I understand some of the terms that you used, and that we can integrate everything the way that it will allow us to move forward, to have both multiple things: reducing turf grass, establishing safety in easements, and safety for driving, for visual kinds of things, while we allow more native plants to be placed, more plants in general to be placed in areas that we'd like to have reduced from mowed grass.
Okay, Rita, so I'm a little confused. Is this, I just need some clarification about this, because we've been talking about Chapter 40 revisions for a while. Are you proposing any changes in the scope of the chapter?
Not in the scope, no. It's just interpretation of some of the changes that were suggested. The last time I asked for some input from Chris and Commissioner Gabrandel, and I have some feedback from Chris, and we just haven't had a chance to have an exchange. So I just wanted to call it a little work group so that we could have some discussion, and possibly, I'm hoping that it could be done in one session, because there's some significant improvements that I'd like to make sure that I understand before we move it to this group for approval.
Okay, as a commissioner, you're fully entitled to do that and recruit whoever you think is appropriate and who might participate and contribute to this work. So I don't think we need any formal action by the commission. My suggestion is just that you send an email to the entire, entire commission members and ask, if they would like to join a work group and just outline what the scope and the goals are and the estimated time commitment, and then and maybe not a formal deadline, but some idea of the deadline for that work, and then get volunteers and then report back next month. I think that's Kathy. Kathy,
Yeah.
wonderful.
One of the reasons that it's taking so long is not the ordinance itself, it's the procedures and operations that come from the ordinance and how it's interpreted. And so we're trying to make sure that we have some of those supporting documents available, as well as there are some new developments, and one of them is the National Wildlife Federation has issued a statement including recommended ordinances for local municipalities regarding wildlife gardens, wildlife-friendly gardens. And so while that wouldn't be in the ordinance, that would be part of the supporting documentation. And so we're just trying to keep up to date as the world keeps changing and we keep finding additional information that will be beneficial.
No, that sounds great. That sounds great. Okay, thanks, Kathy. Are there any other comments? Does anybody else wish to make a comment at this time? Okay, Rita,
Okay.
well, you're fully
Thanks for the suggestion. So look for an email.
Okay. So are you satisfied with this?
I hope so. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So the next item under unfinished business is a standard item that we have about the Gelman plume report. I think we do have some lingering questions about the MS4 situation. So I don't know, Rita, would you take the floor and discuss this?
This item is here to keep the issue to R4 so that we have an ongoing ability to comment on what's going on with the Gelman plume. And I want to just, in this case, I want to call attention to an excellent article that was printed in the Detroit Free Press just yesterday by reporter Garrett Allison. And he reviewed the entire history of the Gelman plume from its identification, from before its identification up until now. And I strongly encourage commissioners to seek that out and read it. I will send a link to the article for you to catch it, but it does have a paywall. So I have been in touch with the Free Press to see about obtaining some copies. If I have to pay for them, I will do that, and to allow that to be distributed so that people can read it without having, if you don't have a subscription to the Free Press, then it would be available. But I would like to actually, at this point, in terms of reporting on status, I believe that Councilmember Griswold is really up to date, and I see her hand raised, so I would like to acknowledge her.
Kathy, you have the floor.
Okay, yeah, I would just like to suggest that our minutes include the link to that
Okay.
Detroit Free Press article, even though it is behind a paywall, because I think it's a very, very important and comprehensive article. And then also regarding Gelman, the city issues a quarterly report titled Gelman Plume and 1,4-dioxane. And this is public information. One of the problems with Gelman is some of the activities in court include our legal strategy, and so they're privileged. But I can send this link to Rita or Galen so that we could also put that in in the minutes, and that's sort of the official city's position, and it includes the settlement update, the MS4 permit, what Eagle Card are doing, the MPDES permit. And one of the things that I've done is I work closely with Scioto Township elected officials because the Gelman Plume is in Scioto Township, and so they seem to be the most assertive, and they have the resources devoted to keeping up to date every day. I mean, there's been some actions with the appeals court just in the last few days, but I have not received any notice of it, and the only information I have is privilege. But what I can say, and this was in the Detroit Free Press article, is that Gelman continues to appeal and fight this in the court system. And that has been their strategy all along. And so I feel very fortunate that we have the dual path now with the EPA as a second way to work on resolution or remediation. And also related to this, the water treatment plant is going to have another analysis. They did one in 2015 to determine whether we wanted to invest in improvements to the water plant or to connect to the Great Lakes Water Authority, known as the Detroit Water System. And they're going to do another analysis, and there will be a work session devoted to it, I believe in September of this year. So that's related to both the dioxane as well as the PFAS levels.
So that's a council work session, Kathy?
Yes, that's a council work session. So I'll make sure that the environmental commissioners are notified of the date of that work session in case they want to attend. And I don't know if Lisa Dish wants to add to this.
Lisa, do you wish to comment? Or Chris Graham does. Lisa? I don't see her, so Chris, go ahead. You have the floor.
For many years, I've been suggesting that there might come a time when we have such a drought in Michigan that we don't have enough water entering Barton Pond to supply our water. And that would be a calamity since we do not have enough wells in the city to make up for the 85% of our water, which comes from Barton Pond and the Huron River. And it seems to me that some sort of plan B ought to be in place. If I understand correctly, Detroit's water comes from Lake Huron. If I understand correctly, Genesee County and its environs are building a pipeline from Lake Huron so they can get off the Detroit city water supply, going all the way out to Flint and Genesee County. I'm not sure I would propose we build a Plan B pipeline to Lake Huron, but it seems to me that Detroit water is in Ypsilanti, and it might or might not be practical to add a connection in case we need it for a year or so. Maybe I'm nuts, but I remember 1988 when it didn't rain from Easter Sunday, and it was just a spritz on Easter Sunday until July 17th. We were completely and totally bone dry in southern Michigan, and so was all of the fertile growing zone of the United States, all the way out to Iowa. And on days in June that year, it was 104 degrees in the shade with a 40-mile-an-hour wind all day. And it was unbelievably awful. In 1988, I said, uh-oh, along with James Hansen, who went to the Congress that summer and said, we have a problem about climate change. And many people went to work until the oil and gas companies decided to quash work on climate change. And now we are in a lot of trouble, predominantly because of that. Again, maybe I'm nuts, but if our river, our water supply doesn't flow very well or stops flowing for a summer, we're kind of in trouble. Thank you.
So is it my understanding that this discussion just pertains to the wastewater treatment plant hooking up to Detroit's the GLWA, or
Just the water treatment plant, the intake.
Yeah.
And a couple of items, I want to acknowledge the water treatment plant leadership, Brian Steglitz and also Glenn Wizorkic. I don't know how to pronounce his last name, but they both seem to be very knowledgeable about this. And so I have confidence that it will be a thorough analysis. And a good news item is that 10 years ago, we were using 120 gallons per person per day of water. And now we're using 80 gallons of water per person per day. So we have definitely reduced our water intake.
So this is fee increases and what they do. I'm sorry, I didn't realize we were talking about sewage treatment. Lisa, thank you for all these reports. We're doing a very fine job in our sewage treatment efforts in Ann Arbor. We are very nearly state of the art, and I don't think we need to burden the city of Detroit with our stuff.
Mm-hmm.
To my knowledge, there's no discussion about sewer treatment connection, only water.
Okay.
Oh,
Right,
okay,
thanks.
then I wasn't out to lunch. All right, thank you very much.
You're
All
welcome.
right, thanks, Kathy. Lisa, you have the floor.
But if we were to join this, we would be receiving treated water, and we would just be delivering it. We wouldn't be treating it. And so I do not think that this can be a backup, because it actually means it would mean a shift in infrastructure. It would mean bypassing our infrastructure. So I think we have to make a one or the other choice. Either we refurbish the water plant that we have, the drinking water treatment plant that we have, or we plan for a switch. But the idea, I think, Chris, of a backup in case we have a drought wouldn't be viable, because it's apples and oranges. Currently we treat our own water here in Ann Arbor, and to receive treated water as a finished product from this new pipeline.
I get you, Lisa. So Detroit is pulling water from Lake Huron, which needs actually very little treatment. And I'm not suggesting giving up on our own systems. If we have a problem, it's going to be transitory. It's just that we have 5 wells down on the airport. The one in town is closed. It's 15% of our water. 85% is coming from the river, and we do really genuinely need to treat that a lot. But there may be a way to bypass a lot of our systems with Detroit water for the time period that we might need it. We have outstanding people working on our sewer and water systems. The proof of that pudding is that somewhere back there 100 years ago, they said, well, okay, we're not going to allow our stormwater tiles, our stormwater drains, to overflow into our sewage lines, causing what has been disaster for Southeast Michigan and much of Ypsilanti right next door. We have a completely separate system. We've had wisdom in the people that have worked here for 100 years. And I don't want to mess with that. I'm not suggesting we switch to Detroit water. I'm simply saying we need a plan B in case the river stops flowing.
Okay, well, I'm sure that'll be an item of discussion, a public discussion leading up to whatever decision might be made. But thank you, Kathy, and Lisa, you still have your hand up. Okay, so so thanks for bringing this up, Kathy. It's very important. There are certainly, not just engineering implications, but ecological implications, political implications, what have you. So this would be a very important decision to be making. So let's move on to new business. The first item on the agenda is discussion of format of minutes and action points discussion. What I'm going to say about this is that city staff prefers to have very spare minutes that really just mention what the topics were discussed, with no little or no detail beyond that. For me, I feel like it would be useful to have more of a summary like what we've seen lately. I think it would help. Another thing that would help is if they were indexed to the timestamp on the broadcast. That would make it easier for people to refer to the video recordings, if they're interested in a particular topic while they're reviewing the minutes. So I think it's worth maybe having a discussion about this, about what other commissioners feel is useful. So the floor is open. If anybody wants to, I see Rita's hand raised. So why don't you go first, then Kathy.
Thanks. I just want to say, I think that actually this set of minutes that we just went over, these two, are an example that shows some contrast, because there was one that has more detail, and there was one that was a little bit shorter but still had information. So I just wanted to point that out to help our discussion. I'll just state my own preference is to have kind of in a medium amount of detail so that we can get a flavor for what the discussion was. If we can add the timestamp that Steve described to the minutes so that a person who may be interested in really seeing the detail of our discussion could track back to it and see it even more detailed, in an even more detailed way than what we write, that would be really super.
Well, Kathy, you have the floor.
I support having the timestamp, and in terms of the amount of detail in the minutes, more is probably better, but we have to weigh that against the cost and of resources to create them. So if there's limited resources, we can capture much of the conversation simply with a timestamp and an easy link to the video.
Yeah, okay. So those are alternatives. I think this may be something that's best tabled for our working session in August. I wanted to bring this topic, Rita and I wanted to bring this topic up now because there's been quite a bit of back and forth between us and the city staff about this. And on the one hand, I'd like to have a set of minutes that's useful for, the residents and citizens here, as well as the commissioners themselves. So let's see, are there any other suggestions about maybe modifying the way we, the amount of detail we put into the minutes? What I've heard is that having a timestamp has some support. So I don't think it's worth a big discussion right now. So why don't we continue this on our working session and traditional working session in August. And meanwhile, we can have some conversations with further conversations with city staff about this, and get a better idea of how much staff time is involved in putting timestamps on these minutes. Okay.
Just a quick question, Steve.
Yes.
Is the concern from the city about the staff time in preparing the minutes, or what is the concern to keep them brief?
Hey, it's mostly about staff time taken up in preparing detailed minutes.
Thanks.
It's really not. it's difficult for the staff person to be managing the meeting, and organizing a lot of the logistics while also taking detailed notes and getting them into the format in Legistar. We've had a lot of problems and a lot of back and forth about getting things set up properly in Legistar. And a lot of that has to do with the staff turnover and commission support. But I think I think we should just decide something based on what commissioners feel that the need is, or what would be more appropriate, and balance that against whatever time we're requesting of staff. Okay. And just saying, as the chair, I've been writing more detailed minutes and submitting them to staff. So I'm happy to continue to do that. And the major problem is getting them embedded into Legistar. So we'll explore that further and bring this up as an agenda item on the working session, okay, in August. And have some more, and we could lay some alternatives on the table and talk about the trade-offs in more detail at that time, okay? Are there any other comments? Anybody wish to make a comment? On hearing and seeing none, I think we'll move on. The next item on the agenda is about Ann Arbor's contribution to phosphorus in the Huron River. So this was mentioned in our meeting last month. Lisa Dish mentioned that council had approved a legal settlement that the city has been involved in for, I think, at least a decade, at least 2 decades, possibly 3. And I sent out a PowerPoint presentation that I think I'll put up right now, if I may. I've done some research, and this is it's quite a complicated topic, because just to recap, the situation is that the city inevitably has to discharge through both its stormwater and its wastewater some phosphorus into the Huron River. The phosphorus cannot be entirely cleaned out and put somewhere else. This phosphorus adds to the natural phosphorus burden. Phosphorus is a limiting nutrient in the aquatic environment here. So what that means is that this additional phosphorus contributes, I'm not going to say causes, but I'm going to say definitely contributes to algal blooms, harmful algal blooms, both in Ford Lake, downriver, and in Belleville Lake. These algal blooms have they're not just aesthetic issues. They're associated with fish kills, substantial alteration of the ecosystems, and what's most alarming is that these blue-green algae secrete toxins that are liver toxins to humans. So if you remember, the city of Toledo, for example, because of the harmful algal blooms in Lake Erie, where the city of Toledo gets most of its drinking water, they had to shut down their drinking water system for a substantial period of time. I think it was a week or more, until the situation could be addressed, because these microcystins are very potent liver toxins. Other communities have also had problems with this, like in Adrian on the Raisin River, because of CAFO contamination. The Lake Erie contamination comes mostly from CAFOs that are located in Ohio, but there are CAFOs, that's concentrated animal feeding operations, that are located in southern Michigan and Lenawee counties and Monroe counties, mostly Lenawee County and other counties in Michigan, but they're not, the Huron River watershed does not have as much of an agricultural contribution to some of the municipal wastewater treatment plants. So the idea is that the concept is that if Ann Arbor reduces its phosphorus discharges into the Huron River, that they may have some effect on the harmful algal blooms. There's some controversy about whether this is true or not. So should we be spending the money, or is the money better spent elsewhere if we want to prevent these harmful algal blooms. So this is a complicated topic, and what I would propose is, first of all, I do have this slide deck that's attached to the agenda, so I can put it up. But if enough commissioners have had a chance to look over it, and it's available for public inspection, so I'm inclined to skip it if there's no, there was not as a special presentation. It's just there to facilitate our discussion. But my personal opinion, after reviewing a lot of the information, is that I think this is best discussed at a future Environmental Commission meeting where we invite 3 people to give a brief perspective for 10 minutes each, and then join a discussion, a more extended discussion for perhaps an hour or more about this issue. The people I would suggest inviting is Rick Lawson from the Huron Watershed Council, because the mitigation of phosphorus should be based on a watershed management plan. And the Huron River Watershed Council, as a joint governmental body as well as an NGO, develops the watershed plan for the Mid-Huron River here. And so their input would be critical because they just finished the new water management plan last year in 2020. It was updated. The second person who we should invite is the director of the wastewater treatment plant, or his designate. So I think I will invite him to a future meeting of the Environmental Commission. And then the third person would be a professor at the University of Michigan who has done quite a lot of research on this issue locally and who is able to provide a lot of information. Professor Lehman from Lehman, Leahman. Their names are all on the slide deck. So I think that's what I would like to do, and I'm wondering if so. I'm opening the floor for discussion. Kathy has her hand up, and then Yang Wen. Oh, no, it's something on your wall, Yang Wen. I don't see your hand up.
She had her hand up first.
Oh, okay. Or is it? Oh, I'm sorry. It's superimposed on an image of your something on your wall. Sorry about that.
Yeah, a small picture. I raised my hand earlier when I was talking about minutes. I just realized my name was spelled wrong on the last minute. So can we just change that from like ZHANG to ZHENG?
We can certainly do that without a vote. Thank you. Would you like to comment on the phosphorus issue, Yang Wen?
I will think about this.
Okay. We'll have an opportunity at a future meeting. Kathy, you have the floor.
Yes, our Attorney General Dana Nessel has raised the issue of phosphorus a couple times when I've seen her in meetings, and I was at a fundraiser in Dearborn this week and mentioned that even though there was a court settlement, the Environmental Commission was interested in it. And she asked to be invited to our meeting. So you may want to send her your slide deck. Her statement was, and she's made it more than once, is that she became a lawyer only because she couldn't make it through organic chemistry, but that's not really her first interest. So I think that her interest in phosphorus is definitely genuine, and so she would appreciate an invite.
Okay, I will certainly make sure that she is invited to the future meeting. And phosphorus is an inorganic compound anyway, not an organic compound.
Oh, okay.
Just to be anal about it, okay?
More to learn, okay.
So thank you, Kathy. Because yeah, it's a complicated scientific issue, and I think the important thing is it's something that needs to be solved, but we want to make sure we're spending the money in the right way.
Yes, and I think we're fortunate to have an attorney general who who is very interested in this and wants to learn more.
Okay, very good. Okay, Rita, you have your, Lisa, you had your hand up.
I think Lisa, yeah.
Well, mine's quick. I was just going to say that Earl Kenzie would be a great person to invite to speak from the wastewater treatment plant perspective.
Yeah, he's the director, so I was going to invite him or whoever he might want to designate. Is there anybody else you think could provide useful input for this discussion, future discussion? To me, it seemed like these would be the most prominent players, okay, who could shed light on this issue. Okay, Rita, you have the floor.
Yeah, thanks. Steve, is there, I know you put some data in your slide deck, and I just wondered if there's anything else that you'd like to refer to us to review beforehand that would help us get a sense of, for example, the source of the phosphorus, if there's a way to track it, and if we have that information already, just might be interesting and help us discuss.
Well, one thing I stumbled on is you see there's a mention of something called capital E, capital EQ, EEQ. I have not been able to find a number, but that's what the just to recap what the settlement is. We have 2 years to do whatever we've been doing, what we're doing now. We have 2 years to continue doing that, but nobody seems to know exactly how much phosphorus we are contributing. So I think part of it is an estimate, is establishing whatever this EEQ number is in terms of pounds per day that the city is delivering, and I think both the stormwater and the wastewater are relevant in this case. The second thing is that for the next practically 20 years from, I think you can see from the slide deck, but we have until really 2048, to limit it to some fraction of that. And then the hammer really comes down at a very, a long time in the future, like in 2045 or something like that. So there's plenty of time, it seems, for both, technical advances and a reconsideration of this from a legal point of view, depending on what information might come to light. I have been able to find, one of my frustrations is that I have not as yet been able to find any document that EGLE has issued, which effectively mentions about what remediation standards are acceptable or what policies are acceptable. I'm sure they're out there somewhere. All I was able to find was a document from Connecticut that points out that there are at least 36 mechanisms by which, phosphorus could be reduced. So that's quite a lot of cost-benefit analyses that should be done, or at least some triaging to be done. So, and I'm thinking this is something that the commission is, this would be within the commission's purview, and it's also something that we would be capable of doing to help assist a public discussion and assist City Council in weighing the cost benefits of the various options we might have open to us. That's my personal take. So I see more hands up. There's first Kathy, then Lisa, I think, and then Chris.
I think Lisa was first.
Okay, Lisa, then Kathy, then Chris.
Okay, I just wanted to say quickly that we do. I'm sorry, I muted myself instead of putting my hand down. We do know a fair amount about where the phosphorus is coming. Some of it is in those lakes to begin with, because they're they're primordial deposits, and they just get when there's and the lakes are anaerobic, so they're still, and then when there's like a big rainstorm or something like that, it gets stirred up. And so that's one of the things that's charging the algal blooms. The other thing that we know is that runoff from fertilizer is accounting for some of that, because there was a significant decrease in the algal blooms and in the phosphorus after Ann Arbor enacted its ban on fertilizer with phosphorus. And so the city itself has done a fair amount, and we do know some about what is causing this. I don't know. I don't think anyone, I cannot remember if I do know the amount that's in it that, that we're discharging. I was trying to look through my notes, but I don't really think I'm going to be able to find that.
Oh, not tonight. No, I think we'll have some time before, we have this on the agenda for a subsequent meeting of the commission to figure a lot of this out. And yeah, my recollection is that we reduced our phosphorus emissions by 28% through that fertilizer ordinance, but we could certainly do more. And we've gotten something like 43% of the way towards a 50% mandate. So that's like 80% of the way there just with that. So it's not clear and Professor Lehman was arguing with Eva about what model they were using for actually judging how much the phosphorus problem came just from the sediments in the lakes themselves. And that, of course, the cheapest way to mitigate this problem is to just aerate, the lakes instead of, that may be the least expensive and most effective way of doing it. So rather than limiting our discharge further. So this is worth, this requires some consideration. And, identifying what the data gaps might be, figuring out how to get more certainty around the remedy, the appropriate remedy. And whether, and how much of it really Ann Arbor can accomplish, no matter how much money it spends. I think street sweeping is another input there because, fertilizer that ends up in the street, this is another reason why we should not be dumping leaves in the street for collection in the fall. It's because, they all contain phosphorus, and so the running stormwater will leach it out of that. So keeping the streets relatively clean, not just fertilizer, but any organic matter will definitely help. And I think the city has made some steps in that direction as well. But I don't have any details. Kathy, you have your hand up.
Yes, I was talking to Kevin McDonald in the city attorney's office, and he is also very interested and very knowledgeable about the history of what Ann Arbor has done to reduce phosphorus. And so I would suggest that he be invited to this meeting. And also, if it would be helpful, I could request a summary of what the city has done, separate from the legal documents for the last 15 years. Kevin said that when he joined the city, that the file regarding phosphorus reduction was on his desk, and that was the first thing he worked on. So he's also very interested in this and offered some information to me today. So I think that if we take the lead on this, we'll find that there are many people that are knowledgeable and are interested.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure there are. So I will contact him as well.
Oh, okay, thanks.
Yeah, and so I would encourage everybody to exchange emails about this in the meantime, and I will continue to distribute information as I can as it comes in, and I'll try to consolidate it into a shared document that we can use as a basis for for informing each other and for helping us facilitating a discussion and making a decision about this at some future time. I think this is something that's probably not so appropriate for the August meeting since it's a working session. And so we might wait until September to bring this up. And as I mentioned, I don't personally feel any sense of urgency about this, since with the legal settlement we're allowed to go through this, just practice the status quo for another 2 years, but there's no reason to postpone it that long. But I think it's worth a good consideration and building a consensus and building more of a political will about what to do, about what's appropriate. Okay. Chris, you have your hand up. Sorry.
Well, I would hope the aerators in Belleville and Fort Lakes are solar powered out there in the summer. So those pumps are serious electricity.
Mm-hmm.
It seems
could
to me
also-
that we could do two things. One relatively easily, one much more difficult, I suspect. One is to increase the storage requirement for rain gardens.
Mhm.
They are completely worthless for the kinds of rains we've had in the last month. I mean, all of them would have been completely overwhelmed, and would be even if we increased the standard to something a little higher. And of course, Rita knows and Lisa knows, and thank you, Lisa, for passing on all these documents. The coefficient of runoff for turfgrass is just about the same as asphalt. And of course, I would guess the principal source of phosphate that isn't somehow added to the environment is coming off our soils. And if we diminish runoff by converting turfgrass to more absorptive plant materials that allow water to percolate rather than run off, will diminish the phosphate load in the river.
Mhm.
And causing that to be a regulation is a ways away, I would guess. But it would have a big effect.
It certainly would. You know, we have the whole example of detergents. You know, dishwashing detergents used to have were loaded with phosphate, and they were banned back in the 70s, and they made a big impact. People are still allowed to use phosphorus as a chemical, as a pure chemical, you know, rock phosphate as a fertilizer. But even just, you know, just having a regulation where you're not allowed to use phosphate in any fertilizer in the city would be useful. You know, and you can still add phosphate to your garden, but it would be a slow release variety like bone meal.
No fertilizers, especially not on grass, contain phosphate in Ann Arbor. That's the rule. Whether that's
rule.
true,
But I'm not sure how.
But I think the commercial companies are complying, and I don't see much phosphate fertilizer in the vendors that homeowners can buy here.
Well, you can still buy it online, and you can still apply
Sure.
it to your gardens.
But
So,
that's expensive to ship. So most people are buying from local vendors and
right. But I know you can buy it from Amazon, 50-pound bags of it. So, okay. So a lot of this is going to be public education, of course. So, let's see, Chris, did you have you had any more comments?
sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Okay, your hand was still up. So, does anybody else wish to make a comment at this point? Okay, I see or hear none, but so I will continue making inquiries over the next month, and give the commission an update next month, and then we will have probably a whole environmental commission meeting for this item alone when it's prepared, when we all feel prepared for a general discussion and some moving forward to some kind of a decision. Okay, well, the next item on the agenda is Professor Sally Oy is going to speak on.
Steve?
Yes.
Sorry to interrupt, but I think that we reordered to have Kathy talk about 820.
I thought that was going to be at the end.
At the very end? Okay, I thought it was at the end of new business. Okay, all right.
Well,
Let's continue.
this is a new business. Sally Oy and the planning staff report.
I'm sorry.
Going to be the next on the agenda. And then we'll
Okay.
get Kathy and Lisa.
Thank you.
So let's see, Sally or Rita, do you want to?
Yes.
Why don't you manage the discussion here?
Sure. I'd like to welcome and introduce Professor Sally Oy, astronomer from the University of Michigan, who has guided the city's development of an outdoor lighting ordinance to improve the quality of our lighting at night, improve the reduce the use of electricity, and actually it's something that will improve our nighttime environment. And so I would, she has kind of, along with John Mirsky, done a lot of work, and this ordinance that we're going to discuss tonight has actually been approved by the Planning Commission. It's been slightly amended, and you'll see, you had in your packet the amended ordinance that'll be discussed at City Council in the first meeting in August, I believe. But we wanted to just have a chance to have the Environmental Commission to see this ordinance, hear its importance, and make some comments that I think will, I'm hoping, will continue in an educational direction. But before we go, I would just like to again thank Sally Oya for joining us, and if you want to start right now and talk, that would be great. Thank you.
Great. Let me get myself set up here. Can you see my screen?
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Thank you so much for inviting me. And I'm actually also the coordinator of an organization called Michigan Dark Skies. And that is a community group that is dedicated to raising awareness about light pollution and advocating for preserving the natural night sky, which, as I will show, is an important environmental concern. I do want to, again, give a great acknowledgement to Commissioner John Mirsky, who really took this on and said, let's do this, when I approached him about trying to put together a lighting ordinance for Ann Arbor. And so without his enthusiasm and dedication and work, together with a couple other members of the Planning Commission and a couple other people, this would never have happened. So we're very, very grateful to all of them. So I have actually presented on this topic before to the Environmental Commission 4 years ago, but most of you are new now. So I apologize to those of you who have already heard various incarnations of my presentation, but this is an opportunity to bring everybody on board, and as Commissioner Mitchell mentioned, to really hope to spread the word, and the Environmental Commission is so important for this kind of advocacy. So basically, we're talking about a change to the fundamental nature of the night. And the night is its own ecosystem. Ordinarily, it should look something like what we see in this picture, the normal night sky with stars and darkness and so forth. But in fact, 80% of people in the world live in something that looks more like this at night. And so that is obviously not natural. A lot of this lighting is absolutely necessary for our functioning at night, and some of it's beautiful, but a lot of it is not. And the part that's not is, meaning not used, means that it is wasted light that performs no function or task whatsoever. And that means that it is literally wasted energy, and therefore it's pollution. It's light pollution. When you look down on the earth, as you see on this picture, you can see all of this light going straight up into outer space where it serves absolutely no one. So that light is not doing the function that it was intended to be doing. So light pollution is a significant waste of energy, and it's a problem that is also increasing exponentially as time goes by. Here's a study showing what the light pollution map of the 48 states looked like in 1950s, in the 1970s, in 1997, and then the projection for 2025. And you can see that this is really an existential threat to the natural dark ecosystem. Here's the light pollution map for Michigan. And you can see that we're one of the few places east of the Mississippi where there are still substantial regions, especially in northern Michigan, that have pristine natural darkness. There's even a couple patches in the lower peninsula as well. So this is something that is very precious now. In fact, the Michigan Department of Natural Resources has designated 6 state parks as dark sky reserves. So even our state recognizes at that level that dark skies are a natural resource worth preserving. Another thing to point out on this kind of map is that these are particularly light polluting cities that you can see here in red, but that their footprint really extends over a much larger area. So the affected area is on the order of 10 times larger than the light polluting source urban center itself. So the surrounding communities are in fact stakeholders in a city's lighting and its lighting ordinance. So this is an environmental issue. We humans don't pay too much attention to it because we are daytime creatures. And that is to the detriment of every creature that lives at night. Artificial light at night, the buzzword is ALAN for the environmental, for the biological sciences. Artificial light at night interferes with wildlife, migration, mating, feeding, and sleep, which is pretty much everything that wildlife do. Animals and plants live by a 24-hour cycle, and that gets disrupted by artificial lights. And that includes humans as well. So, for example, the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded in 2017 for discoveries relating to the circadian rhythms of human health. And much of this stems from disrupting our sleep cycles, which has serious health consequences, including obesity and cancer and cardiovascular problems and so forth. The American Medical Association has actually issued an extensive report about the problems related to light pollution to our health, and that's posted on our group's website. So it's not just ourselves that are having trouble with this, but obviously animals as well. If we can't sleep, neither can they. Birds are an especially sensitive creature to light pollution, and that's because many bird species migrate at night. They normally rely on navigating by the light of the moon and the stars, but with artificial lights, then they get very confused in their navigations, and they frequently end up colliding with buildings, which are the #2 cause of bird death after cats. And it's believed that up to 1 billion birds are killed a year, which is just mind-boggling. These are up to 1 billion that actually crash into buildings and die. And you may have heard about how drastically the bird populations have been going down over the last decades. We are here on the bird migration highway in the Great Lakes. And so that is something that birding community is well aware of, this problem with light pollution and crashing into buildings. And for example, here in our Great Lakes area, the Royal Ontario Museum annually puts on this exhibit where they've collected all these dead birds and display them to raise awareness about this issue. A particularly poignant study was done regarding the 9/11 tribute lights in New York City. They have this, on every September 11th, they have this display where they shoot these very, very bright lights straight up into the sky on the footprint of the former Twin Towers. And these actually attract birds, so many birds that you can detect them on radar, which is what you see down here in the lower left. There are so many birds, about 15,000 birds that are trapped there that you can actually see them on the radar. So this is when the lights are on, and when the lights are off, that you can see that they're not there anymore. And so they actually need to turn these lights off for 20 minutes at a time in order to let the birds go. So there are organizations that try to promote these lights out programs, including in Chicago, and Detroit has also participated in these in the past, as has Ann Arbor. It's always a struggle to kind of remind people to do this every year, but there are organizations right here in our area that are always raising awareness about the lights out programs, including Washtenaw Safe Passage, for example, here in our county. So birds are not the only animal that is affected by light pollution. There's another famous example of sea turtles, where baby sea turtles hatch on the beach, and then they are biologically programmed to look for the glinting of the waves and thereby reach the sea as quickly as possible in order to survive. But when they see the city lights, they go toward the glinting of the city lights instead, and they end up not making it to the sea. And obviously they don't survive in that way. So this is from a public service announcement in Florida. You may also have heard about the insect apocalypse. When I was a kid and we'd go on road trips, then, you know, the front of the car would be covered with insects. And that just doesn't happen now, which is absolutely terrifying because insects are the bottom of the food chain. So light pollution has been definitively linked to the insect apocalypse as just one of several reasons why this is happening. But for example, when insects larvae are exposed by lights at night, then they get consumed by their predators more easily. As well, adult insects like fireflies, even I believe, are threatened now. Basically other activities that insects do are also disrupted. They navigate basically by the same principles that birds do, for example. And then there are other animals at night that are also important to us. For example, bats are nocturnal pollinators of certain things like the tequila agave. And then fish apparently are also affected by light pollution, including economically important species and so forth. So just to give a quick overview of light pollution itself. So there's three types. We've got glare, which is the kind that you see when you're driving at light and somebody shines their headlights in your eyes. That is a health hazard. It's a safety hazard for both drivers and pedestrians. And then there's light trespass. And that happens, for example, when you've got the neighbor's floodlight shining into your bedroom window, which is also a health hazard, as we've talked about, as well as a nuisance. And then you've got sky glow, which is the unnatural brightening of the night sky itself. And that, again, is a health hazard and an ecological problem. There's also an issue with the color of light pollution. So bluer light is not as good as red light, generally speaking. And that's because blue light scatters much more strongly. So that means it spreads the footprint of the light pollution. You've also got a problem that blue light is experienced more as glare, especially for people who already have vision problems. And then there's also the fact that blue light will also destroy your night vision more quickly than red light, which is why astronomers run around with little red flashlights instead of blue flashlights. So it turns out that these LED lights that are very prevalent nowadays have much more blue light in them. If they're the kind that are super, super bright, like, you know, when you're under a fluorescent light, that's a very, very white light. That white color actually has a lot of blue wavelengths in it. And that's the kind that actually, is a problem at the level that the American Medical Association, again, has issued a statement about LED lights in particular as being disruptive to our sleep cycles. So LEDs have been wonderful because they are very energy efficient, but the question is, will they actually save us energy? So there's a phenomenon called the Jevons paradox, which was known since 1865, that if you increase energy efficiency, it simply leads to greater energy consumption. And what I'm showing here on this plot is the price of lighting energy in this dotted line since the year 1700 up to the year 2000. And this is data for the UK. And then the solid line shows the per capita consumption of lighting energy in the UK over that same period of time. And you basically see that these two lines exactly mirror each other. So people are not saving energy, they're just lighting up more. And I think, you know, anecdotally, if you look around at all the LED lighting that's gone up recently since the year 2000, it seems completely consistent with the Jevons paradox. And that's why legislation is absolutely imperative to realize any benefits of conservation for energy efficiency. So the good news is that this problem is easily solved simply by following these 4 steps. To light only what is needed, no more than what is needed, only when it is needed, and no bluer than is needed. So this is not like cleaning up a toxic waste dump. Once you have the lights off, the problem is solved. And so that's the idea behind the Ann Arbor lighting ordinance. The idea is to help accomplish this and to help raise awareness so that people can accomplish this and just look at their own lighting and how they can chip in. So these are the highlights of the ordinance. So it will specify that nighttime outdoor lighting should have warm colors. And this is a technical specification for that. So it basically corresponds to if you have a white light, that it's not that super, super white LED white, but that it is a warm white. In fact, LED manufacturers are getting much better now at manufacturing those kinds of lights that are warmer in color for white. Light trespass is going to be limited at the property line. Fixtures are to be fully shielded. So in other words, no light above the horizontal, but not this, but this. That there would be curfew for business lights, and there would be limits on brightness for facades, under canopy lighting and parking lot lighting, and to the extent possible that there would be some way to get non-compliant lights into compliance. So that is what we are seeking support from this commission for. I would now go into a little detail on the ordinance itself so you can see exactly what the document is. Let me just switch to a different screen share. Oops. Okay, so here is the document itself. Actually, that's the old one. And so this is in your packet. So it starts with the purpose. The purpose is basically to address the issues that I've just mentioned, to minimize the adverse effects of light pollution, to protect the natural environment, to promote energy efficiency, and also to foster an environment that actually enhances commerce and whatever we want to do at night. If you have these more mellow lights, then it's basically a more pleasant urban environment in our downtown district. Then we've got applicability, and it basically applies to all outdoor lighting at night, that is on private property, of course, and because that's what the UDC applies to. And there are these exemptions. Temporary lights are exempted, so that includes things like Christmas lights. So that's for a total of 90 days. Lighting for flags is exempted, and any lighting that has to do with a historic character is also exempt. And then there's the color, as I mentioned, the limitation on the color. And then we have the limits on trespass. And light trespass means no more than a certain limit is allowed over the property boundary, and that's done by zones. And then we've got a prohibition on glare. And then we've got specifications for shielding. So if you're shining if your target is flat, basically on the ground, if you're trying to illuminate something that's pointing downward, then basically your fixtures have to be shielded so that there's no light emitted above the horizontal plane, as I showed in an earlier figure. For vertical targets, let's say that you're trying to illuminate a statue or something like that, then that's okay. You can point upward some, but you should make every effort to shield the rest so that you're not spilling too much light off of the target. And then there are limits for facade lighting and a curfew for facade lighting. And then there's limits to brightness for under canopy lighting, like at gas stations and so forth. And then floodlights. Floodlights are not to be angled any higher than 45 degrees, meaning 45 degrees downward. And then there's a prohibition on changing lights, so no moving lights or blinking lights or things like that. The amendment that was mentioned extends this to temporary lights. And then there's parking lots, limits to brightnesses on them and a curfew for them as well. And then indoor lighting also shall not be a source of light trespass or glare. And then finally, to the extent possible, for example, if you change an outdoor light fixture completely, not just the bulb, but if you change the light, then it needs to come into conformance with the new rule. And then this would be enforced, especially for any site plan that requires a submitted plan to the city. The rest of it is pretty much just definitions. And there's a couple, diagrams that are helpful and so forth, made by Commissioner Lisa Sauvé. And then there's the amendment right here that was discussed and added on by the Planning Commission. And that, again, addresses the temporary lights not being flashing, etc. And that's pretty much it. So I would be happy to answer any questions about this.
Well, thank you, Professor Roy. I first saw this topic. It was almost 4.5 years ago by now.
The Planning Commission approved this just about a year ago in August.
Yeah. So I see a few hands raised. Kathy Griswold and Lisa. I'm not sure who was first because I can't, I still see the screen that's being shared.
Kathy was first.
Okay, Kathy, you have the floor, and then Lisa.
Okay, thank you very much, Professor. I saw this presentation at a local Sierra Club meeting at the Botanical Gardens a few years ago. And I also reviewed it at, I believe, at John Mursky's request, because I'm pretty outspoken about the need for lighting, especially lighting for pedestrian street lighting. And I agree with everything. This is really great. I look forward to something similar for our public right-of-way, if whatever we can control locally that's not controlled by the state and federal government. What many people don't understand is more lighting is not better lighting. And in looking at crosswalk crashes, glare is a contributing factor. And also a recent crash that we had in 2019, the north side of the street was quite dark and it was difficult to see pedestrians. And so what ended up happening is DTE kept increasing the brightness on the south side that actually made it, because of the contrast, even more difficult to see the pedestrian. So I won't go into more details other than to say, this is great. I recommend that we endorse it, and I look forward to the work for the public right-of-way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Griswold. I remember discussing it with you. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Lisa, you have the floor, and then Chris, and then Young Wen.
This is really illuminating. I am confused about one thing, which is that in the document that was on our screen, in the applicability section, there was, it wasn't that one that we were seeing. We were seeing a different applicability section. And so that's partly why I'm confused. The one that was showing on the screen as you were speaking at the very end included any project for which a site review is required. I would strike that.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I would strike that because we're having the same issue with the EV ordinance. The requirement of a site plan review by, oh wait, is it just site plan review at planning or site plan review at council? For yours?
Well, the language that you saw was this. Can you see my screen or not?
Yeah, that's not what we were seeing though when you were speaking. It was a much shorter thing and it had something about a site plan review.
And I thought that was sorry for interrupting, but I thought that was the prior version of the ordinance. As opposed to this.
Was it this?
That was,
No.
Yeah,
No,
this
it
is,
didn't,
It was not what we are seeing right now. So
was it this?
it's not changing,
Nothing.
Sally. I'm not sure what's
Oh,
happening.
okay, I'm sorry. It says your screen sharing is paused. Let me resume. Okay, there we go.
yeah, it was.
Okay, so is it this?
Can you go up a little bit? Yeah, so scroll up. No, because I think this is the same thing again that you were just showing us.
Yes, so let me ask,
wasn't-
is it this one?
Yeah, it was this one.
Okay, yeah, this is the existing one.
Oh,
So this is going away altogether. So I apologize because when I first started to show it to you, I came up with this page yeah.
That explains a lot because you were going into so much detail that was not on this page. And I was thinking, okay, so now I understand. And I'm looking at the file from my agenda. So now I'm not confused. And
I apologize. And this, what I'm showing right here actually is only for non-conforming existing lighting in the first place. But of course, if a plan is submitted to the city for any new construction, it needs to comply with this. And they need to demonstrate.
Okay, I think, let's see, whose hand was up? Chris and then Hyung Wen.
So, thank you. Gosh, and Energy Commission and
Planning Commission.
Planning Commission, wonderful help from the university. The original request to do something about lighting in Ann Arbor has been around since the 2000s, the mid 2000s, almost as long as I've been on the commission. And I'm so excited that we've reached the level of sophistication that this ordinance suggests. I'm wondering if we could add a provision that would allow some sort of complaint process to ask for city intervention in egregious circumstances of too much light. I appreciate that it's normal to do these kinds of regulations for site plan review procedures, and in the long run that will help. But there are some obvious shall I call them difficult situations out there that someone might make a complaint about and cause a process that might result in diminishing light pollution sooner rather than later. Just a suggestion.
Thank you. Enforcement was something that was discussed, quite a bit, because this is obviously something that is difficult to enforce, especially because it's at night. And so I think we just kind of left that as a click, fix situation. But I hope that just by raising awareness, and this is the kind of thing that's going to need a lot of education. So I hope also that, we can follow up at some point with the suggestion that Councilmember Griswold made about, moving on to the city's right-of-way stuff also. I mean, we have actually had some discussions with the city and with DDA to begin with, and then I'm afraid COVID happened and I kind of let that slide because a lot of my notes were in my office. So I think education is very, very important in addressing these kinds of issues. but I hope that having an ordinance will at least allow people to start approaching each other and saying, are you aware that, you know, you're causing glare and that this is actually an issue that the city has legislated about? So, you know, if somebody is in violation of this, then I hope, you know, there would be a means to at least try to submit it through See, Click, Fix. And I also did want to mention, since you suggested that Ann Arbor has been looking at this for 20 years, I was pleasantly surprised that Chelsea, I discovered only in the last few months, has had a lighting ordinance for years, and they've actually just gone through an update to it, which is far more comprehensive than Ann Arbor's. And also Scioto and Brighton have lighting ordinances that are more comprehensive than Ann Arbor's. So we're a little behind the curve on this.
Sorry. Yang Wen, you have the floor, and then Rita.
Yeah, thank you so much for the wonderful presentation. I really feel the need to like target light pollution because some of my friends are like birders and then they really love birds, and they also told me about like how lighting can affect birds. And I just have some questions for you. So like, what are the main sources of light pollution in Ann Arbor? Is it like from like commercial like businesses, or like is it from like residential area, from like private homes? And like, will this ordinance like be able to target those problems?
Oh, that's a
And how
great
effective
question.
would that be?
That's a really great question. In general, businesses produce a lot more light. So I don't have actual data on who's producing the most light pollution here in Ann Arbor, but in general, businesses do have the most light. They need the most light. So, you know, that's a natural consequence. We've also had a lot of issue with street lights in Ann Arbor in terms of the pedestrian globe lights that are downtown. And DDA has been very helpful in helping us to get most of those, well, some of those converted. The new ones that they have implemented since we've approached them, I don't know if you've noticed, but some of them actually have these light lids so that the top half of the globe is dark. And they also have changed the color of them so that they are this more mellow color. And you can actually go downtown and compare and contrast. You'll see some of these newer globes that I'm talking about, I think on William? And then in Carytown also on 5th. And you'll notice immediately a contrast between those and the ones that are on Main Street. The University of Michigan is a huge problem too. And they are not under the jurisdiction of the lighting ordinance. So that's yet another, you know, initiative that we have. We're only just getting started with the University of Michigan, but we do have that on our agenda. And then the rest of the new streetlights that are going in are actually not bad. The city is aware since we've raised this. So I think the new streetlights that are going in are in good compliance. And then also the ones that are under the state jurisdiction for streets like Jackson Road and so forth, those new ones are also fully shielded and they're generally in pretty good shape. Although some of the ones that are being installed at roundabouts in the county, we're having an issue with the Washtenaw County Road Commission because they are putting in lighting for the roundabouts that is significantly in excess of industry guidance. So that is something that we're still trying to work on. And of course, the lighting ordinance won't affect them either. So the lighting ordinance applies to the private property in the city. So it would be private homes and businesses as well. So I think the main benefit would be the businesses, in answer to your question.
Okay, I see. And also, I feel like, because some stores leave their lights on, like even when they're not using them midnight. I'm just like wondering, like, are these lights necessary for safety, or like I'm not exactly sure like what these lights are for, because like in China, where I lived for like a long time, and they don't usually have lights in the stores overnight. I'm just like wondering, because I was just really curious, like what what those lights are, if like they are necessary for businesses.
Well, it's not my job to decide whether the night lights are necessary or not, but if they're not necessary, they need to be turned off, basically. But there is a specification in here that lights that are not for safety should be off, I believe, half an hour after the close of business, if they are outdoor lights.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, when Rita, you have your hand up. You have the floor.
Thank you. Sally, thanks again for this presentation. It is great. I want to just point out that in our next step, that one of the things that has really come to my mind is that the need for public education ongoing. So given that the ordinance has its limits in applicability to the site plans, I'm hoping that we'll be able to work with council to move things forward in an educational way to encourage homeowners and business owners to reduce their lights, even if they are not covered by the changes in the ordinance. It would be really nice, in my opinion, to reduce some of those holiday lights, reduce some of the lights on, as Young One was saying, lights on in buildings at night. It really supports the kind of thing that the 820 program is guiding us toward, that we really should be reducing some of our use of energy overall. So I'm hoping that we see some action in that way as well.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's really the most important thing that we could be doing, because this is not going to help unless people are aware. And I think once people are aware, they really do just suddenly say, oh, I never thought about that. I think I'll change the lights on my house. And it's really not necessarily an expensive thing to do.
Mm-hmm.
Our group is available to help with anybody who would like to work on that kind of outreach. We have on our website, first of all, we have a website, and we also have educational materials there. And our group has even developed a children's activity too, for anyone who's interested.
Thank you.
Okay, Rita. Yeah, thank you very much, Professor Roy. So if there are no further comments, shall we go on to the resolution?
I see additional hands, Steve. Sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, I did not notice that. Well, I don't know who was first.
Lisa, I think Lisa was first.
Lisa, and then Kathy, and then Chris, or?
I have a very quick request. Professor Roy, would you be willing to share your slide presentation with us? Because there are some graphics there that I think would be great to put in my newsletter so that my constituents can be aware of the problem. The exponential increase, for example, was a pretty striking slide.
Yes, I'm definitely planning to do that. Commissioner Mitchell had already asked me to do that in advance, so I apologize for not having them ready for the meeting. Thank you, Councilmember Dish.
Okay, thanks, Kathy. Then Kathy, and then Chris.
Chris was next.
Oh, sorry, Chris, and then Kathy.
Okay, I just have a quick comment. It probably goes a little bit beyond the ordinance. My daughter lives in Connecticut, and she just drives me crazy because the lights are on in the house all the time. She's got 2 little boys, and they're running around. She just can't deal with it. But it drives me nuts. And I compare it to a situation where I saw in France once, where I went into a dentist's office, and the hallway was dark, and I had to push a button. And the light went on in the hallway for 1 minute. You had a minute to make it to the door. Maybe 3 or something. And we just, if we could get I think this whole ordinance and the whole lighting thing in general, to me, impinges on the whole idea of outreach. You know, people just need to be educated that we just don't need as much light as we got. And it goes way beyond the ordinance. So, I mean, if there's some way we could raise the public awareness of this whole thing, it would be great. So I'll shut up. Thanks.
Thank you. That's exactly the point.
Right, thanks, Chris. Kathy, you have the floor.
Yes, I just wanted to volunteer my advocacy and history based on pedestrian crashes. And one of the examples that you mentioned was the lighting at Roundabout. And what most people don't understand is if you're driving on a road that's dark and then suddenly you have this bright light at the roundabout, it's actually more dangerous because your eye is not going to be able to quickly adjust to the darkness again, and you're not going to be able to see. So it's not just a waste of energy. So anyway, I feel very strongly about that, and let me know if I can help in any way.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Griswold. I will definitely be calling you. This issue with the Washtenaw County Road Commission is exactly that concern.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
And they are building, so there's already a new one at Wagner and Miller. Well, I'm sorry, this is not Ann Arbor business, but yeah, there's a problem with the lighting and exactly the way you described.
Oh, okay. And it does impact Ann Arbor residents who are driving out there, though. So
Sure.
I feel it's relevant. So
yes.
Thank you.
Well, I didn't want to take up this commission's time, but I will definitely contact you. Thank you so much.
Which
Thank
is
you.
a lot of Ann Arbor residents while Maple was closed. But Wagner is totally packed with cars.
Yep. Okay. I think I don't see any other hands up. So Rita, why don't we move onwards to the resolution?
Right. All right. So would the commission like to look at the resolution on the screen, or have you all read it? Question.
I've seen it. I mean, I've seen it, but
right. So I really feel uncomfortable reading the whole thing, but I think the sense of it is that it points out the issues of light trespass, sky glow, etc., glare, the blue rich LED lighting, the waste of energy. Just that light trespass is really a problem for safety and for just health, I think. I'm skipping around here.
well, Rita, I'm sorry
Yes.
to interrupt, but my understanding is that there's nothing new in this resolution. This is a resolution supporting what the Energy Commission and the Planning Commission have already.
That is correct.
Lost.
Yes.
So
Right. And so the addition, though, that I would just want to say then is the last part, which has to do with education. So encouraging council to work toward developing some educational materials, or perhaps working in conjunction with Professor Oy and her group to expand that kind of outreach and education. I really think that would be worthwhile. So yeah, so that's that. So are there any questions about the resolution?
Move to pass the resolution.
And Kathy Griswold second. Thank you. All right,
Okay.
Steve, you want to call the vote?
Yep. All who agree to pass this resolution endorsing the amended enhanced outdoor lighting in support of the Energy Commission and Planning Commission's submission to City Council, say aye or raise your hand. Aye. Anyone opposed? Hearing and seeing nothing, I think it passes unanimously. So, Rita,
Thank you.
Did you have Galen forward this to City Council?
I will do that. Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Roy.
Thank you so much. All your support is greatly appreciated.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We'll all be in touch.
Okay, well, let's move on to reports from committees. So natural features. Chris?
I think he stepped away.
Oh, he did.
Looks
Okay.
like.
Well, how about pollinators?
Pollinators is working toward very similar kinds of things that I just mentioned, which is education, to provide people with information on the importance of, saying this over and over again, reducing turfgrass, reducing pesticides, and installing gardens. So we are working with a young entomologist who is providing us with some background and some, I think, some additional support that will help us develop some materials and some outreach. So that's our next particular program. And also in another one that I've talked over significantly with Commissioner Mirsky is trying to work with some large landowners to convert property to less turfgrass. And we have a target. Ex-Commissioner Ann Bannister is working with me to approach one of the local churches that has some significant land that we think would be useful. So we'd be building on installations there that would provide educational information for even the parishioners that maybe they would take to their homes and expand it that way. So that's just one right now.
Yep. Okay. Chris, do you have a report with Natural Features Group?
We, because of my overload in business, are going slowly. A suggestion was made to try to convert a lot of the language in new and old in the woodland section and the landmark trees section to a chart. Apparently that's the fashion in the planning department now, rather than just text in code, chart and graphics. And we've done our first attempt at that. And it's not so easy. So stay tuned. We'll see how that goes.
Okay, you're a pioneer here, Chris. So I think
I'm sorry,
the other work groups.
I need to retire and put full time on this stuff.
Well, that's fine. Yeah, okay. Do you want to mention anything else?
No, but I had a client that lost a 36-inch heritage tree down into a big red oak down into his house last week, and
Ooh.
I was very sad about that. It was really big, and it was a tree in an 84th fragment on the top of the Glendalough Hill, and came down with no obvious reason. Perfectly healthy tree, lots of acorns.
Oh, that's a shame. Okay, the Zero Waste Working Group.
You want me to go, Lisa?
Yes, I want you to go first, and then I'll talk about the policy committee, okay?
Sure. So we've completed the micros grant that we will be submitting to, I'm blanking right now, Lisa, Next Energy.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, for the first phase of work on creating metrics around the circular economy. So that's been well worked, and the Office of Sustainability and Innovations will probably be submitting that on behalf of the city next week. And then the goal for the first phase is to get an intern to work with us to do the background work and the research and the literature review to develop the metrics. But then we've already started working on the second phase and the next grant application to move the work forward to implementation. We've got great support from several organizations providing letters of support. So overall, we've I think put together a well prepared proposal, and it's great that we've got support from several organizations, county, city, university, etc. So Fingers
That's
crossed
good.
that we'll be reporting back in September on successful receipt of the funding, which will be $10,000 for the first phase.
Okay, so you'll know what the funding decision was in September?
That's what we're anticipating, sometime September-ish. Yep.
Okay. That's
But I
fantastic.
think we're committed to the work moving forward, and I think so is the city. So if for some reason it's not funded, I think we're going to find alternative paths.
Okay.
And then the other major thing that the Zero Waste Working Group is doing is that its policy committee has drafted a zero waste target date, which will become a resolution to bring to council, but first we'll bring it here. And it asks the council to reaffirm its zero waste goal, which was in not the most recent, but the one before that iteration of the Solid Waste Resource Management Plan. And we're asking council to reaffirm this goal and set target dates and think about strategies as part of realizing strategy 5 of the A20 plan, which calls both for expanded composting and recycling. So, and also to promote a circular economy. And part of one of the stages along the way to a circular economy is expanding compost and recycling to reduce the amount of waste that goes to landfills. And so we will be bringing you this policy document, I hope, at the next meeting. We've gone through really a lot of drafts and a lot of really thoughtful, deliberative sessions on this, and we've engaged staff support. And I think it's a really strong statement at this point. So I'm eager for you to see it and excited about that.
Yeah, that's wonderful. Okay. Let's see. I guess that leaves the solid waste working group, which is really basically a construction and demolition ordinance. I don't have anything to say today about that. I think that covers the committees and working groups. Other commissions, I think Shannon's not here, so planning's not represented. We still haven't gotten an assignment, a commissioner assigned from the Parks Commissioners yet. I hope to remedy that by our next meeting, which is a working group session. John Mursky is out as well, but he's provided a statement here from the Energy Commission that I think I will just read to people in his absence. So the Energy Commission, first of all, at its meeting on July 13th, they considered 3 resolutions. There's a second presentation on the case for a municipal utility by the citizens group Ann Arbor for Public Power. A resolution was also introduced with a first reading asking the Energy Commission to formally request City Council to fund a municipalization feasibility study. This is estimated to cost $120,000. So there was a lot of good discussion, but a date has not yet been set for the second reading and possible vote on the resolution, as it is likely other viewpoints will be presented in future commission meetings. If the idea advances, there is also likely to be a lot of discussion on the content of the feasibility study, RFP, regarding the scope, type, and mix of assets, grid and or distributed energy resources, including, I imagine, microgrids, and services to be evaluated in the study. So again, this is an alternative the city has to provide to create a supplemental utility that would be supplemental to what DT is providing, I believe. There was a second reading of a resolution in support of a proposed energy benchmarking and disclosure ordinance, which applies to the commercial and multifamily housing sector. The resolution was voted on and passed unanimously. The draft ordinance now goes to City Council for consideration. A resolution in support of a sister ordinance requiring a home energy audit and its disclosure at the time of sale of single-family residences will be taken up at the Commission's next meeting. So the two ordinances together will ensure that the Ann Arbor built environment sectors have some type of energy-related disclosure requirement. This would be commercial, multifamily, and single-family buildings. So different disclosure requirements make sense for these different sectors. Both ordinances are modeled on similar ordinances which are in effect in other municipalities. There was also a second reading of a resolution asking the city to promote and support the use of low carbon materials in construction. The resolution was voted on, passed unanimously, and now advances to City Council for its consideration. So a pilot low carbon, meaning 37% lower carbon emissions, CO2 emissions, mix was poured last week on repair sections of South Industrial Highway and at Tri-Delta Sorority. The cement workers liked working with the new mix, and the second pour was observed by a concrete expert from Michigan Tech and a rep from the Michigan Concrete Association. So all of the above mentioned materials and resolutions are posted on Legistar for anyone's inspection. We should also mention during this meeting that the mayor has proposed a climate action millage to be put to a public vote this November. The proposal was discussed only briefly at the Energy Commission meeting. There has been some other, I think, reports on MLive, and at a city council meeting, there was a brief discussion, I believe, about this millage proposal. All I know at this point, personally, is that it's a millage proposal to fund the 820 effort, basically, and it's a 20-year. So far, it's a 20-year millage. It's a proposed 1 mil. I think Lisa and then Chris have something to say on this. So you want to start, Lisa, and then Chris has.
It's not on this. I wanted to say that I could report from the Planning Commission, and that it's very easy because the Planning Commission did not meet on July 6th, and it is meeting now. So there's nothing to report.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you. Sorry, I just noticed that. Chris, you had something to say about this?
Going back to your, forgive me, I've completely forgotten what in the world you were talking about before you got to this. Getting tired. My apologies.
No, I'm sorry. I was talking about the Parks Commission.
And before you talked about the Arts Commission?
Oh, the parks.
I'll think of it and be back to you.
Okay. All right. So, and then, okay, that's all that John wanted to report at this point. Okay, from the Energy Commission. So I'm sure there'll be a lively debate about this millage proposal, and I'm not sure when council is going to bring it up on its agenda. Possibly, I think, on August 2nd. Is that correct? Okay, Lisa is affirming that. So we can expect to have a discussion at council about this millage, proposed millage. That's all I know. So if there's no more, okay, Chris has his hand, still has his hand up.
I haven't thought of it yet. I'm sorry. I'll keep working on it.
Okay. That's okay. So the next report on the list here is from council. And you were going to mention about the 820. So this would be a good place to talk about the 820.
Okay,
changes to the 820 plan.
I mentioned to Councilmember Dish that I was working on a resolution for the Environmental Commission, and she offered to co-sponsor it and suggested that we just bring it to council. And we did, and it passed unanimously on Tuesday night. And before midnight, the 820 plan was actually updated. So it's truly a living document. And the resolution was to add just a few words to strategy 6, action 6 of the plan, to include not only monitoring heat, air quality, waterways, and flooding, but implement sensors to monitor and strategies to manage. And just a few words, but that is very, very important because it moves us into a more active operational area. And I want to commend Missy Stoltz for writing the resolution, for supporting it, and also for updating 820, as well as Jennifer Lawson. And what this means is that we will be more proactive, and there will be no increase in funding needed from the general fund because stormwater management is funded from the stormwater fees. So there is a separate fund for that. And Missy and I met with some neighbors who had extensive flooding damage, and it's been chronic off Orchard Hills Drive. And the proposal is to have a meeting with the neighbors, not only in that neighborhood, but in a couple of adjacent neighborhoods. And we feel that we need to be proactive because if we're having flood damage on a regular basis, we can't be a resilient community if we haven't resolved our minor flooding issues that are chronic. You know, we've got to be ready for these heavy rains. And one of the issues is that stormwater management was not required in residential neighborhoods until the 80s. So many of our older neighborhoods do not have, stormwater management. And in the case of Orchard Hills Drive, there is a county drain there, but it's inadequate, and we believe that it is collapsed in at least one place. So, excuse me, with this framework, we'll be able to have the Office of OSI do education, advocacy, interacting with the community, and then sort of scope out some of these projects, and then the actual work will be done. And I'm through Public Works, and that does acknowledge that we're going to need more staff because we can't just say we're going to do more through OSI when the work is going to be done through Public Works. And so there's already been a discussion about that, and that will be ongoing.
Okay. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, this has been a recurring topic, you know, and kind of still I think a unresolved area, certainly. You know, so I think this is deserving of a full commission meeting at some time in the near future at the right time.
Are you referring to flooding?
Yeah, maybe we can have a review of the city's green streets policy and revisit that somewhat because it does seem to not be addressing the issue completely. So, Lisa, you have your hand up, and then Chris.
Kathy, first, I want to thank you very much for all your work on that. It's so important that we make the connection between flooding and climate change, and that the work of OSI, while it has been brilliant and effective in the areas of energy, it also needs to extend to these other effects of climate change. So, but did you want to update them about the landfill solar project and the fact that council approved the articles of incorporation for joining WRMA if the other members of WRMA accept us? Or do you want me to have just done that by what I just said? Because council also did that.
Yes, if you do that, I guess I would like to say that this resolution, it really looked easy and simple, and it was done within a few days. But that is because of the tremendous work from staff that had been done prior. And so it was just the right time to bring this together. So I cannot say enough about the staff that worked on this. It passed unanimously. It was not controversial at all. However, it was something that has needed to be done probably for decades.
Well, yeah, thank you very much, Kathy. That's really stellar. Chris, you have your hand up.
So, Lisa and Kathy, the performance of the city in the 6.5-inch event Friday 3 weeks ago presented flooding problems that weren't on the list of things that were approved in a extensive study 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago. There are things that we need to worry about. That list was a list of chronic things and are underway. Did we get some new ones to add to the list in this last event?
We are aware of them. Neighbors have raised issues. I think that it's still being formalized. I know that in the 3rd ward, there was an issue on Pittsfield Street or Road. I have 2 in the 2nd ward, narrow gauge nature area, as well as the area around the Arboretum.
Wow.
One of them will be on this in the CIP. However, when we have this type of flooding, we can't be a resilient community if we're going to take 4 or 5 years to analyze it and get it in the CIP. And so I think that this resolution is going to fast track some of these.
I'd be interested to see the list and compare it with the really comprehensive study that was done and see if there are new ones in this much. I mean, for us to have more than a 4-inch event is really unprecedented. And so no doubt some new things showed up.
Would you mind sharing that list with me?
Sure.
Okay,
I'll go back and find the study, and the city has a model to predict these things, and it may explain why it all fast tracks so much. Stephen, construction debris. I don't usually take materials to what used to be called calverts, which is where a lot of the construction debris from Ann Arbor gets cycled through. It's out on way West Jackson Road, now owned by Recycle Ann Arbor. And I was astounded at the volume of material that they're processing through there every day. I mean, the place is just really busy. And I asked the guy, okay, so a load of construction debris comes in here. Are you sorting it, recycling it? And he said, absolutely. So I would suggest that contact be made with Recycle Ann Arbor and with the guys that are working out there. I don't know who's leading and solving these problems for them, but I think they're hot on the trail of.
No, they are. Sean Adams is my contact out there, and they've been doing this for a number of years in support of LEED projects.
There you go.
Many of them at the university, because they have because that's a requirement for LEED certification.
You're right on top of it. Thank you, Stephen.
Yep. And some of the materials are eminently recyclable and some aren't. Like for example, asphalt. All that asphalt that gets taken up when they do road repairs, that's almost all recycled. But other things, it's more difficult. So thanks for the comment, Chris. I hope I can update the commission next month during the working session about the C&D.
The other thing that we're really missing is Recycle Ann Arbor's reuse center on South Industrial. They lost their lease a year ago, and the place has remained closed. And gosh, it'd been nice to keep the thing going for that year of pandemic, I guess. But
I sorely miss it. That was the first place I went to before I went to a hardware store, because you could almost always find like what you needed, like a bed frame or a piece of pipe to do a project, or, you know, or, yeah, shingles. So I'm hoping, I'll see if I can get an update from RAA and distribute it to this list. Okay. Is that the complete report from council, Kathy and Lisa? That's all fabulous. That's really good news. I'll have to go look at the, I'm sorry I missed that council session. I'll have to go look at the agenda and the minutes on the attachments myself and see what was transpired for the details. So in terms of a chair report, I just have one, and that is that we still need to recruit 2 members. We're still missing 2 members, and I've requested an update for applicants, and I would encourage anybody who's listening to this to, if they would like to serve on this commission, to apply within the next week on the city's website, and you would be considered along with the current list of candidates for these 2 positions. And I need to continue trying to contact the Parks Commission to try to get a Parks Commissioner assigned. That's all I have to say right now. So the next, are there any questions? No, I don't see any. So the next item on the agenda is a report from staff. Galen, do you have a report from the staff?
Not this evening.
Okay. So let's see. The next item on the agenda is action points review. So what I have so far is that our next session in August has traditionally been a working session, and I think that's a good practice. So I would like to schedule that as a working session. Part of it, you know, especially because we have new commissioners on hand here. So please respond with any agenda items you'd like to have discussed during this working session. And Galen Hardy will check to make sure that all commissioners have been added to the email distribution list. I thought that had been done a month ago, but apparently it has not been done. I will send out the promised survey by Monday on commissioners with what their skill sets are and what their interests are, and what kind of goals they would like to see for the commission. I would like to have this survey returned by August 10th, if that's possible, so that I can compile everything and then distribute it before our working session on August 26th. Galen Hardy will include the link to the FREEP article in the minutes. I have a subscription to FREEP, so I know I can read it. I'm not sure what the copyright laws are on this kind of distribution, but I think I want to respect whatever those are. So I'm surprised it's still behind their paywall. Hopefully they'll decide to release it at some time in the near future. And then Sally Oy will share her slide deck with commissioners. I think possibly Rita Mitchell already has it. So maybe Rita can just make sure that that slide deck is emailed to all the commissioners as soon as possible. And are there any other action points I might have missed? Did somebody, any new action points?
Can you say number, I think it was number 3 again, the survey?
Oh yeah, you'll include a link from the FREEP article on the Gelman.
No, about the survey to commissioners. I think that was number 3.
Yeah, I'm going to send a survey by Monday to the distribution list for the commissioners. It's basically a survey. It's all long answers, no multiple choice, on what people's skill sets and interests are and whatever information they want to share. Like, you know, if they've got a LinkedIn page or something like that, they can choose to share that. But whatever their interests are, what they're passionate about, discussing and having this commission deal with, what their skill sets are, and what issues they would like especially investigated over the next year. That's what I was talking about. So I'll handle all that, Galen. Okay. And of course, you'll be copied on it as well. So are there any suggested items for the next agenda at this point? But I will send out, as I have been trying to, I'll send out a call for agenda items. Rita and Gail and I will put together a skeleton, and then we'll see what people might want added to it. Rita, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I just want to put myself on for a task to send a message to commissioners for their interest in working with me on Chapter 40.
Okay.
And I want to say, Chris, thank you very much for the help that you've provided so far. I appreciate it very much.
Okay, so at our next agenda, you want that as an agenda item? Next meeting.
Let me just decide that. I guess it would be September if we're doing a work group in August, right?
Yeah, and I just want to remind people that if there are no other comments on items for the next agenda, I also want to remind people that we need to elect a chair and a vice chair at this meeting as well. Okay, so that will be an agenda item. So let's see, if there's no other suggestions at this point. The next scheduled meeting is August 26th, 2021. It'll be a working session meeting. They will begin at 7 p.m. So the next item on the agenda is public commentary, our second public comment period. This is an opportunity for persons to speak for up to 3 minutes. Please call 1-888-788-0099 or 877-853-5247 and enter meeting ID 978-7334-3910. This information is also displayed on the meeting agenda and video feed. City staff will select callers that have raised their hand one by one using the last 3 digits of your phone number. In order to electronically raise your hand to indicate your desire to speak, please press *9 on your phone. You will hear an automated announcement that the host is allowing you to speak. When speaking, please move to a quiet area and mute any television or background sounds so that we may hear you clearly. Please state your name and address at the beginning of your comments. And be patient, there is a delay of up to 30 seconds before a connection is established. Is there anybody on the line right now, Galen?
No.
Okay. Well, in the meantime, there's something I did forget with the chair's report. And that is that I'm sorry I've been neglecting the commission business the last couple of weeks because I've been working very hard on PFAS with the National Sierra Club and some other organizations. I just want to announce that Debbie Dingle had written and submitted a bill called the Pfas Action Act, which is a significant alteration in how the EPA and how the TSCA program handles PFAS. This bill passed the House yesterday after 3 years of consideration. I do not know the complete details yet because, of course, there were amendments flying around at the last minute. So I'm eager to look at a final copy of it, and I can send commissioners a report on that. But what it does is that it significantly empowers the EPA to regulate PFAS chemicals in our environment and their manufacture and use. So we finally got some movement on this issue, and so I'm looking forward to some relief for residents, businesses, small businesses that are largely affected by this. This will also possibly ultimately affect our ability to get some money to for whatever obtain money for whatever remediation might be required from our water treatment plant or our wastewater treatment plant with regards to PFAS contamination. So, Galen, is anybody else on the line? Anybody on the line right now?
No, there's no one on the line.
Okay, so this ends the public comment period. And so I declare this meeting adjourned at 9:24. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
See you next month.